Get a group of retirees together or folks that are 5 to 10 years away from retirement and ask them this question. What's your biggest concern in retirement? And for sure, without a doubt in my mind, one of the top 5 answers is going to be, I'm worried about running out of money. Now, how do I know that? Because I've been a financial advisor for over 20 years, and I've literally asked that question to thousands of people. It may not be their number 1 answer, it may not be their number 2, but for the vast majority of people, it's going to make the top 5. And for good reason. There's a good reason to be concerned with that, but there's also things that you can be doing today so that you have the peace of mind so that you don't have to worry about this. So let's jump in and I'm going to talk about them. First, I'm going to break down everything that I talk here into factors that you can control and things that you cannot control, right? There's a wise saying to focus on the things that you can control and don't worry about the things that you can't control, because obviously, by definition, there's nothing you can do about it anyway, so why worry about it? Let's start with the things that are out of our control. Things like inflation, things like what are tax rates in the United States or your home country going to be like in 5, 10 years? We don't know. How, and this is a big one, what does end of life look like for you from a healthcare standpoint? Are you going to have a chronic disease that might play out over many years, or, as I hope, and probably I think several viewers hope, is it going to be a quick, painless death? I'd love to die in my sleep. And some of us are fortunate enough that that happens, and others are going to have a tough journey, but it's out of our control. And obviously, at least here in the United States, that can dramatically impact your expenses. So again, that's for the most part out of our control. Another thing is, how's the stock market going to do, right? If we're invested in the stock market, is the stock market going to deliver good returns, solid returns, or are we going to get on the negative side of that? And the worst case scenario is if we have negative stock market returns early in our retirement. Why? Because that's when the bulk of our assets, we have the most assets, and therefore a 20% correction on $1 million portfolio, you've just lost $200,000. Where if you have, if you're in your final 5 years of life and you have $300,000 left, a 20% correction there is going to be $60,000. So it's a different level there, and that is called sequence of return risk. I'm not going to go too much into it, but just know that you're not indifferent between bad returns happening at the beginning of your retirement and later. But there's nothing you can do to prevent that from happening, but you can diminish the impact that it has on your personal finances. And you do that by your asset allocation, making sure that you have the right percentage of stocks and bonds in your portfolio so that you can weather that storm. And many people, when I ask them what their allocation of stocks and bonds is, the most common answer is, I don't know. And the second most common answer might be, well, I'm 60% stocks and 40% in bonds. And then my follow-up question is, well, how many years could you live off of that 40% bonds? And the majority of people don't know, and I don't blame them. This is what I do for a living. This is my area of expertise. But I think it's much more important to know how many years worth of bonds do you have in your portfolio that you can fund your living expenses. Why? Because we have bonds in our portfolio for 2 reasons. One is they tend to be less volatile than the stock market. They don't go up and down, so it smooths out the ride. But importantly, number 2 is hopefully it gives us a place to withdraw money from if the market's down, where we don't have to sell stocks at a low price in order to get access to money that we need to live. Because one of the core tenets that we're trying to live by here is, don't be a forced seller in a down market. And let's say you're taking $50,000 a year out of your account. Well, if the stock market's down and that's the only place you have to take money out, guess what? You've just become a forced seller in a down market. So rather than say I have 60% bonds, 60% stocks, 40% bonds, I'd like you to say, I've got about 60% stocks and I have 5 years worth of bonds that I can live off. I think when things get scary, that's going to give you some solace on those scary nights when you're thinking, I'm getting hammered. I need the pain to stop. Well, you know what? What I want you to be able to think is, it's okay. I've got 5 years worth of living expenses. I believe that the market's going to come back and I'm just going to live off of those bonds. In fact, let's go on vacation somewhere. Let's relax, because the best thing you can do when the stock market is scary is not try to make complicated decisions. The time to do that is in times like now, where the stock, as I record this, the stock market's doing very well. We're at or near all-time highs. Now you can think rationally, you can think calmly. There's not this sense of urgency. You're getting good night's sleeps before you go and talk to your financial advisor. So the time to make good quality decisions is when you're in a good state of mind and when you're feeling optimistic. And it's easier to feel optimistic when the stock market has done well. So that's the part where we talk about the things out of our control. There's a couple other things. There's longevity. How long are we going to live? We don't know what the answer to that is. There are things. I don't sell annuities. I'm not licensed to sell annuities. I don't want to be licensed to sell annuities. But they do have a tool called a longevity annuity, a deferred income annuity, where you can say, maybe it only kicks in if you hit the age of 85. But then it gives you some extra income if you were to live to like 100 or 102, whatever it is. So I just want that to be on your radar screen. None of this is financial advice for you. I don't know your specific situation, so I can't give you financial advice. But what I can do is give you some things to think about. And then you research them on your own, or you visit, I'd suggest, a fee-only financial advisor so that you have somebody that's working as a fiduciary to you 100% of the time. You want to be careful because a lot of people are fiduciaries some of the time. I think you want somebody, it's your life savings. I think you deserve to have somebody working for you as a fiduciary 100% of the time. Okay, let's keep going. Now let's transition into things that are in your control. And these are really important, so don't tune out. You can have a financial plan put together, but your plan is only as good as the inputs that you put into the plan. And that sounds trite, but let me give you a very specific example. If you tell a financial advisor, we are going to live on $5,000 a month, and then we plan for that and we say, hey, good news, you've got a 90% likelihood of never running out of money. And it's subject for another conversation, but just know that 90%, you're not going to ride that plane all the way into the ground. If you're on a path where it looks like things aren't going well, you're going to tweak when you're still thousands of feet in the air, so you don't have to worry about making an abrupt change right at the end. And that's one of the big reasons to work with a financial advisor, is to get that plan, but then also to be proactive and make small tweaks along the way, as opposed to find yourself in a dire situation where dramatic changes need to be made. Okay, so having a plan versus no plan, that's something you can control. And the flip side, not only does it help give you clarity that you're not going to run out of money, but it also makes sure that you're spending as much money as you can and as much money as you want to enjoy your journey. It would be sad to go your first 10 years of retirement, your healthiest and most active years, to go that period and then look back and say, I could have spent a lot more money. We could have done that second trip that we were enjoying doing, or we could have upgraded to first class, or we could have done some of these other adventures. We could have retired 2 years earlier and had healthier years, right? So have a plan so that not only that you're not overspending, but also so that you're not sacrificing unnecessarily. But I do want to get back to these expenses. If you tell your advisor, we're going to spend $5,000 a month, and you end up actually spending $6,000 or $7,000 a month, that can have a really, really big impact. Now, if you do that for 1 year, is that going to have a big impact? Probably not. But if you do that for a decade, if you do that for 20 years, is it going to have a big impact? Probably so. So there's another reason to work with a fee-only financial advisor. And I also think before you retire, you should try living on this budget, preferably for at least 100 days. If you think you're going to go from spending $10,000 a month to $5,000 a month, well, maybe. I can tell you, I've seen a lot of people try to do that, and it's harder. It's much harder than most people think. So if you think you're going to do that, come up with a way to practice that while you're still working before you retire. Because you may say, you know what, that's sacrificial. I don't want that lifestyle. And better to figure that out before you give your boss notice that you're retiring. So try living on it and tweak things if you need to. There's no problem with if you'd rather spend $7,000 than $5,000 in retirement. Just know that, so that your advisor can run the plan and let you know how close are you and what do you need to do to make that happen. Okay, another thing that I want to talk about is just the importance of doing what we can to stay fit in retirement. And by that I mean both physically fit, right? Going to the gym, lifting some heavy things, not because you want to look like Arnold, but because we lose muscle mass every year. So staying fit that way, flexibility. I like to do yoga a couple times a week, and then cardio, do what we can to keep our heart in shape. And also a lot of the battle is in the kitchen. So do what we can to keep ourselves physically fit, but also mentally fit. And the key to staying positive and the key for happy retirees versus not happy retirees is really relationships. Make sure you're constantly fostering new relationships. When you retire, when you leave work, it's just the nature. You're gonna lose some of those friends at work. I wish that wasn't the case. I do see the case sometimes where people don't lose friends, but much, much more often it's common that you're gonna lose those work friends. So do what you can to build new friends. Go into it with your eyes open. And I also want you to not just focus on the big day when you retire, but I want you to focus on the journey between now and when you do get to retire. For that reason, I want you to check out this video here, which are the 7 things I want you to stop doing now so that you can enjoy your 50s and 60s more. I'll see you in there. Bye-bye.